Hi everyone, we're going to give everyone a couple minutes or so to join before we get started.
Should we remain silent as we wait?
I was gonna ask, like, are we gonna, yeah, how about this? What is, I'm putting together like a list of like hacker or cybersecurity culture things that somebody people should know. What is one thing while we wait for everybody that you would add to like a list like that? Mine is the hacker manifesto. I mentor a lot of folks, and so most people don't know what the hacker manifesto is.
I don't have the first thing that comes to the top of my like one of the best books for it, just understanding like the history of nuanced like web things as the Tangled Web. I feel like that's a really good read if you're in the web software security or web space in general.
Good one. Alex, Peter, do you guys got any? Be like,
Mm, Probably
read
nothing
this. Is
there.
it? I was hoping somebody would say the movie Hackers. Like, you got to know that if you're going to be in the culture. Like, there's a lot of throwbacks to that.
Yeah, I hear hackers, sneakers.
Makers, yeah.
Not sure what else.
Mr. Robot. Everyone always
Oh
Mr.
yeah.
Robot. I like a lot because that actually depicts like real world hacking, right? So there's some
Yeah.
stretch, but when they have to go after the tapes because it's like an actual facility, like they're not like I'm just gonna hack it from the outside. It's like it's off the grid. Like you have to go there. So and they don't have like six keeps people on one keyboard, right? Like if you have 10 hands on one keyboard, you hack faster, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, right. What's the one with Hugh Jackman where he's like got to put the cubes together to hack the system? And was it
Um,
Swordfish? Is it I
I
think
could see it though.
Swordfish, I think that's what it was. Let me look it up. Oh, it's 2001. No wonder everyone's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oops.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
Hackers was 1988, I believe.
oh, true, yeah. 1988.
It's old school, dude.
I've said this before. I actually, the movie The Saint with Val Kilmer was like what really solidified wanting to break into things for me. So that was my inspiration.
I'm gonna add that to my list. I have to go watch this.
I liked it.
Perfect. Well, we can go ahead and get started. So, hi everyone. Thanks for finding the time to join us today for our fireside chat, where we're going to be answering your questions that you submitted ahead of time and any questions that you put in the Q&A throughout the webinar. We're going to be answering anything from Mythos, Agentic code risk, and what's next for AppSec. Few housekeeping items before we get started. All lines have been muted, so any questions that you do have, either put them in the chat at the bottom or the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll be getting those do those throughout the webinar. We'll also be sending out all relevant resources that we mentioned throughout the webinar at the end of the webinar, along with the on-demand recording, and a link to everyone's socials here on the panel so that you can follow along with them on LinkedIn. With that, before we get started, I'm going to pass it over to our presenters just to do a quick round of intros before we jump into your guys' questions. I will pass it over to you, Alex, to start.
Oh, cool. I'm first. So, hey, everybody. I'm Alex. I'm a principal security consultant at Cloud Security Partners. I've spent about 10 years as an application security consultant, and I've always been a bit of a hobbyist developer as well. Lately, I've been using LLMs to help find and fix a pretty wild number of high severity vulnerabilities, both for our clients and in open source projects. So I'm kind of coming at this from less of the like corporate AI strategy side and more from kind of the hands-on AppSec and builder side. And really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I'm Ken Johnson, the CTO and co-founder of DryRun Security. And yeah, my background is all things application security for a couple decades now. And yeah, excited also to be here. And thanks for having me.
Next, Cam Walters, Director of Application Security and Security Engineering at Teradata. Been in the space for, I don't know, 8 7 8 years, somewhere around there. Time keeps going. Former dev, was never good at coding, but loved code and loved cybersecurity. So AppSec's the space. Co-host the Coffee Chaos and ProdSec, and co-lead the OWASP SPVS project.
All right. Yeah, I'm Pete Karman. I'm an AI engineer at DryRun, and yeah, like Ken, I'm pushing almost a couple decades now. I started my career in infrastructure and then moved into product security, classical AI, ML training, all that stuff, kind of all aligned into this role. It's all coming together. So, yeah.
Yes, perfect role.
Awesome. So those are going to be our panelists today on the webinar. I actually already see a couple questions getting submitted in the Q&A, so we'll definitely get to those throughout the webinar, but we're going to start with some of the questions that were submitted ahead of time on our form on the website that you guys all filled out, and then we'll kind of jump into those Q&A questions throughout the webinar as well. For the first question, I'm going to ask Cameron. It's kind of a two-pronged question, but around Mythos hype. So what's the hype around Mythos, and should we be concerned about Skynet?
I think it's a funny question. It's great. 10 out of 10, whoever wrote it. I I don't think it's hype in all the hype sense. I do think Anthropic's marketing team is crushing it, and wherever they go next, they're going to get big paychecks because they are doing a great job. 10 out of 10. Um, but beyond that, I think, I mean, Mythos officially came out yesterday with like Fable, right? But it has all the guardrails and different things. So I'm assuming we'll see mixed reviews around the usability around it. I feel that probably the best perspective or the best use case for Mythos is actually using Mythos, and Fable will probably fall short. Is it hype? I don't know. If you read like the Cloudflare articles and was it Firefox, like they're finding great value in it. But if you read their actual articles, it's not like one-shot prop. Whereas it's being marketed as, you say, go find vulnerabilities, and it finds tons of vulnerabilities for cheap, which it doesn't do. You look at Mythos, or you look at Cloudflare and all these other things. They had to build like crazy processes, had multiple agents, all kinds of different things to make it actually effective. In my brain, I hear cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching every time they wrote a process, because that just sounds like tokens on tokens on tokens, which means for the normies or the regulars, people like us who have small budgets and have to be stealthy and smart with what we do, I don't know how effective it will be useful or for us. So we'll have to pursue other methods and other methodologies. So, and will it become Skynet? No, I think we're very far away from Skynet.
That's a good answer. I mean, I'd probably just throw mine on there and just add to what you're saying. I think that it, yeah, I mean, it's of course has improved model capabilities for sure. I'd also agree. I think the marketing on it. I think the confusing part is separating what is actually happening and what it's actually capable of from what people are projecting onto these models. To your point, a lot of work is required to make these things, and I'm gonna defer to Pete on that because I know he can talk all day long about this, but yeah, it takes actual engineering rigor and work to make these things, no matter how great the model is. Um, Productionalized and effective. It does cost a lot of money. So you're in a weird world as a person who might build something where, yeah, you can spend a lot of money on an LLM that has some better capabilities than another LLM, meaning on tokens, or I could spend the money on engineering effort for lesser models where I get the, very close or similar or even sometimes better results, but I have to do all that work or a lot more work myself yeah. And I figure, Pete, like, did you want to throw down on that? Because I figure you of all people understand that problem better than most.
Yeah, pretty much agree with what you're saying. Like if anybody's really interested and has the time, Anthropic did publish like a 650-page report on this model that really described the process more than the high level thing that everyone saw and got scared of. It reveals there was a lot of human effort put in, and there's a lot of cycles spent, a lot of money. To Cameron's point, it's probably estimated around 20K of vulnerability or something like that. So it goes pretty deep. And yeah, it's not something that's new. It's something that I think with this model, the capability is that it more naturally does it without the without being explicitly built to do it. So that's kind of the new capability with this model. But does that mean it's better or not? Still requires a lot of expertise to drive it. It's not doing it by itself. So that's good news for us, I guess. And I don't know, Alex, if you have anything else.
I generally agree with what you guys are saying, but I'll be a little bit more simple and plain, and I will say Mythos is hype. You know, in particular, I don't, I haven't used it, so take it with a grain of salt. But what I have used very extensively is OpenAI 5.5. And so when I hear the hype and read about what Mythos is doing, I already know OpenAI's model is kind of doing it already, and it's not getting blocked by guardrails, and it's a little bit cheaper, especially if you look at yardsticks like Exploit Bench. So, yeah, I'll call it hype. I'll call it marketing. I'm a really big fan of the models we have in the past. Opus 4.6 is great. I'm not really an OpenAI fanboy, just to put that out there, but I don't think Mythos is really unlocking any core new technology. We still have to harness it. You still have to use professionals to kind of guide what it does and what its outputs are. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, I
Do
think
you feel
that
like the, oh,
I
sorry.
was I was gonna say that on both all their perspectives here, like what I hear is that as somebody who like runs a program, I have to choose between a SaaS tool or building it myself with like OpenAI or Claude, whatever models XYZ, because of how much the engineering effort is in there. Because if it's 20K of finding, man, that puts a different perspective. I don't know, at least me as a leader, being like, can I even afford, even if it's a 1/10 that cost? If it was 500 a finding, it would have to be really good findings.
The economics in all of this are super, super weird, and not getting better, which has really been surprised. Sorry, I know this is a little off topic, but it's been surprising to me that LLM cost. I really did think like, technology eventually goes down in price, but not been the case, and not been the case by a lot. I know Pete's smiling. I'm not smiling. I look at the bills. I don't love it. No, but no, jokes aside, like yeah, the LLM costs are it's a thing. It's a real thing. That's probably I think like sometimes I feel like that's kind of even the harder problem to solve is just managing costs effectively, as you're doing analysis. So you can definitely build stuff. There is a lot of work to make sure it's accurate, but also yeah, it's just not you're not spending a ton of money. And so I wonder if Mythos is some people I don't know, some people complain and say that it's more it's easier for attackers or it's sorry, more expensive for defenders, less expensive for attackers, and they blame, I think models on that. And I just I don't know that I necessarily totally agree to the point that you're talking about $20,000 for one vulnerability. So
Kind of
the economics
piggybacking
don't make
off.
sense. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that, we actually had a question in the chat come up while you guys were talking around kind of the same topic. So the question is, considering the costs associated with Glasswing scope companies, how long do you think until similar model capabilities make their way down to more feasible self-hosted open weight models?
Mm. I
They did
mean,
prevent in Fable, didn't they prevent people from, or they're trying to prevent other frontier labs
yeah.
from stealing their data?
Yeah. Well, I think that's common for everybody, right? Like, I think OpenAI even accused a bunch of other, Frontier, other things saying, hey, like people are stealing, so we're implementing more controls. I think it's just a common thing. I just think they listed it as like, hey, we're watching rather than, like just let everybody know if you think you're going to do anything, like we're overly proactively tracking this. So I think that's a natural assumption that any company would want to protect their IP in any which way. So you should always be operating under the cost. But in terms of open models, with open weight, I think it'll get there. Um, in my experience, they're like, I don't know, 8 months behind in my local testing. I don't know if Peter or Alex are you guys seeing that, but I feel like it's like 8 months behind, but it also depends on your local hardware.
I think it depends on what you mean by capability. Like the capability to chain vulnerabilities and exploit them, I'll just throw out shamelessly. We're already doing that at DryRun with open models and smaller models, right? But we have a very complicated system to chain all of that together. The capability, again, I see with this new model is that a lesser uh, choreographed system can pull this off. So if that's the capability you're talking about, I would generally agree, probably around that timeline. But if you're talking about is it possible now, and I think that's kind of the difference from a cost perspective right now, right? Too is like you can have a very high level attacker. Let's talk about like our nation's state threats that can use open models in this way already. What these models are providing is that a still very expert hacker, but not maybe not nation backed, can do this type of thing. And we're not the only product that's kind of discovered these capabilities with open models. And there's other products that do it as well in other different ways. But you can assume that they kind of publish it with their blogs and all that as well. Like the systems around it are very complicated. So I clarify what do we mean when we talk about capabilities, really? So.
Mhm.
Yeah, can I actually ask a question? So yeah, for capabilities, is it two different? Is it like detection and then like offensive capabilities? Is that what we're talking about? Like defense and offense, if I'm distilling it down simplistically.
No, I felt like that was a holistic question, right? Like,
Wow.
when will we have Mythos in local models? And I'm like, I don't think you ever will. You'll have to always do a bunch of scaffolding and building and around what you guys have been talking about. I don't know, Peter, from your perspective, the big thing I hear is that like script kiddies, right? Like we're heading towards a world where script kiddie can do anything, right? But we're looking at Fable. I know you were testing it and other people have. It doesn't seem like it's living up to that hype. And then even if we have local models, it's that's not script kiddie level. But I imagine someday that will. We'll see open source like full shop, like it'd be like, hey, script kiddie hacker 101. And you just download this module and it's got a sweet interface and you like drop a URL and then boom, everybody's hacking everybody. So mm.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Yeah, something I noticed when testing was that shocked me was immediately it's thinking about edge cases and things that I hadn't thought about. I'd run like a very similar set of tests on every new model just to kind of see where we're at. Really just mostly to see where we're at as far as I'm a dev, where it is from a dev perspective. And so thinking about is really did start to think about edge cases I hadn't even thought about in my own benchmarks. So I thought that was impressive. And then when it went to go do the execution, as usual, it was kind of pretty hit or miss. And I think that kind of reliability is an issue. Um, and yeah, unless you're kind of an expert driving it, you won't know you're going to hit those issues still. And I agree. At some point, I feel like that's going to get easier and easier over time as there's more data. Something with with Mythos as well is like their partners. It's all you no longer have zero data retention. They're gathering all this data, so they are going to have the ability to train this to get better and better. And that's when you talk about like a GPT-5.5 cyber. That's how that got so strong as well, is by using vulnerability researchers using Codex and training on that data, right? So they were able to achieve it with a much smaller model than Mythos. So I think over time, now that these are here, they're going to get stronger at this capability. So
Peter, do you mind if I ask kind of what level of open weight model you're experimenting with? Because I have a lot of hands-on experience with one that I can run on my own graphics card, but I know that there's a lot of open weight options that, maybe you get a $30,000 single graphics card, and that's not really attainable for a lot of people, but it might be attainable for a small business. So are you kind of working with those, maybe on computer models or kind of a bigger hosted open weight model?
it's a mix. Yeah, so definitely still using specific models like a GLM 5.1 as like a planner, big frontier replacement type model. But then being able to pass off the work exploration, all of that into a Quinn model that you can run on your machine. And um, I think depending what you mean by your machine, some of this stuff could run on your MacBook, but it will take so long it won't really matter. But yeah, some of them are pretty large, and yeah, unless you're hosting them in the cloud or maybe you have access to like a DGX Spark or something like that, yeah, not feasible on your normal day-to-day laptop. So,
Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing.
Another question we got in the chat, kind of related to all these different models coming out, is how do you guys see product security and application security evolving in the next 3 years? And I will pass that over to Ken if you want to start.
Oh, sorry, that's a big question. Oh, well, I think the way we've been thinking about it is And I want to preface this with saying, like, just quickly, I think that we talked a little bit about economics. I think that there will still be a world where, like, my company will say, company A can't really spend a ton of money on AI assisted dev. Definitely doesn't have the budget for like all the security tooling. Maybe doesn't even have the desire. And I feel like for those folks, what I'm about to say doesn't. That's not. They're going to be their world, right? That they'll eventually get there. But I think for the folks that have budget, their heads are above water, so they can focus on proactive security, things like that. And like I said, have budget. I think you'll see their organizations have already embraced AI assisted dev. So code velocity, like Pete can speak to this, but on average, we're seeing like triple the amount of traffic from the same customers over the last quarter and then a quarter before that. We're just seeing an increase. So what does that tell us? Well, obviously, devs and organizations are fully on the AI assisted dev train. The issue is there's a bit of a like, well, what do we do now, right? So how do we secure the old way of doing things just doesn't work. So I can't, for instance, like say, hey, let's go to the releases process. We're gonna create this new feature, and okay, now we're gonna wait for all the different teams to weigh in and do like their, maybe there's gonna be like a design session with security, maybe a threat modeling session that gets reviewed by security. Um, you know and all the things that happen along the way to see like assessments and make sure that certain things are built into the application and all that. At today's speed to be competitive, now this is the big thing, right? Now businesses have to be competitive with one another and ship things as quickly as possible. It's kind of the de facto way that it's maybe that'll maybe that'll slow down because we'll see some things break, but in the meantime, that's just how it's been. And why I'm saying all this is like security has to keep up, and it doesn't look like security doing much manually, right? I think what I've been saying and truly believe is that for those organizations I've described, their folks will end up being able to manage essentially like an agentic fleet that does all kinds of different things for them, that helps bake in, like we talk about threat modeling. Why is that even like a human being thing? I mean, it's nice, it's good, but you could do that as part of your planning session with your AI assisted editor if it had the right material and the right reference, right? So I think like I'm saying all this to say I think there have to be some proactive security controls that are automated and built into this workflow. I think your job will become managing this sort of agentic workforce that is your AppSec workforce that interfaces with other workforces. And there was something else I was going to say, but I'll leave it at that because I'm sure other people have different. In fact, you know what, Cameron, I just saw a chat from you. I'll pass it over to you. Where do you think people will be in a few years here?
Oh man, I'm really excited for this question because I mean, shameless plug, but on my podcast, we have this week's and next week's episode talking about this exact thing. So I've been thinking about this for a little while. Um, to high level, I think what's already happening is every position, every individual contributor in ProdSec is becoming a engineer discipline. A lot of folks don't like coding. They don't like these different things. I would say you're going to have to change your mindset. You're going to have to be able to review code, understand the code that's being spit out of your agents. Every aspect of ProdSec is changing. The expectation, even from GRC side, GRC folks are traditionally not coders. They just kind of get stuff from other people. That's going to change. That has to change. It's got to become an engineering discipline. You got to build integrations to grab your reports and do all these different things. AI enables you to do all that. So I'm expecting literally from the ground up complete change. The other controversial thing I hear is that DevSecOps is dead at that point because, like, where do you integrate now? I don't know if I agree with that or not, but it's a good question to ask. Like, if you think from the AppSec professional and code level perspective, you really have to scan at generation, right? And do you scan before generation? Do you scan after generation? Are you intercepting the prompts that your developers are sending so that you conserve token usage by not having it scanned after? Because if you look at traditional SaaS tools and code security tools, a lot of them hook in scan after, and then they feed into the loop with your agents and say, hey, we found these vulns, go fix these before you commit it, right? And so then you're just tokens and tokens and tokens. So a lot of companies are shifting. All right, we'll intercept the prompts. We'll put secure, use secure defaults or, OWASP top 10 and apply OWASP top 10 here to minimize some of that. Is that where we're headed? And then for DevSecOps, is that even still going to be a thing at that point? Because where is the integration point? I would say yes, it's probably still going to be there. You're still going to have to integrate because you still have compliance. You have a lot of people that don't trust AI, so you're still going to need reports and scans on your repos and to show that you're delivering secure code. I think Ken, in the past, you've always said that like if we move to the world where AI just spits out secure code, like it only takes one vulnerability for that entire thing to fall over. And so you have to have these levels of assertion. So I think, major things are going to happen. We're going to expand our scanning as well as everybody's becoming an engineer. AppSec has already traditionally been a very engineering space. Same with like a lot of different positions in ProdSec, but that's going to expand. Like even from like threat modeling, like you're saying, why are we threat modeling? Why don't we build agents that analyze and grab all the documentation? Because we have a ton of documentation, we have design reviews, all these things are already architected and drawn out. Have it just continuously update it. And then the next thing, which never happens at most companies, I don't know anybody who's doing this. I would love to hear if somebody's doing this. Do you actually scan your prod and see if they line up between the architectural threat model documents that you had and what was actually built? Because we're all in software. Man, I don't know. When you go to release, it's like, oh, we got to disable this. Oh, we got to open this port. Oh, we got to do this, like to get it functionally working. And boom, now your threat model gone, like completely
You're
thrown out of the water.
you're absolutely right. Like architecture is a big another is going to be another big concern because if code is getting more secure and whether it's incremental changes or the full thing, the architecture is going to lapse. And sorry, I'm interjecting here. Pete had a talk. Pete, I think you should like bring up at least like super blocks or something along those lines, but it's up to you what you want to chat about here. But I think your vision of the future sometimes is more aggressive. Is all why I'm saying that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think the vision kind of aligns with what Cameron was saying there is that at some certain point, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. I guess maybe not hopefully, but more of the time is going to be talking to the agents about what you want to build architecturally, really, right? Like I have these pieces of my system, and this is where AI gets things wrong right now a lot, no matter how much you feed it. It's like if I make this change over in this microservice over here, how does that affect the other system that's a consumer of this microservice, or maybe a downstream microservice that this microservice calls, right? And so in the future, I think we might see connected directly to our agents, other agents that are able to gather that information real time so that while you're in your planning, your spec-based changes, you can think about those things as you're going. And then part of the development as we get away from looking at the code, of course, it's kind of, who knows if that's the big if we get to that point. But if we get to the point where the code is no longer being looked at, we need verifications to happen. So we may have like a QA agent that's running things to actually verify that threat model in a QA environment to see if it can break it. Like what happens when I click this button and then this other button, right? And kind of attack it in all those different ways and see the runtime behavior to actually see if something happens. And then, of course, once we go to production, further agents that have access to that same context that can actually see what's going through your logs and it says, okay, well, this is kind of strange, something that's happening that's not really specified in my threat model. Is it okay? Right. And all that can happen. And really, the agents will then just kind of be responsible for showing you, like, hey, is this something that's okay? Like, here's the information I've gathered. Tell me if this is okay or if you want me to do something about it. Right. So I think if this whole thing gets to where we want it to be, or where the AI folks want it to be, that could be kind of a workflow we're looking at, which feels very, very different, very strange. So.
I just want to say on that last part where we're going to get to be, I think all of us want to get to this perspective where everything's automated in a higher level. I don't know about you guys, but if you look at ProdSec's been this like same loop for 20 years, detect vulnerability, triage vulnerability, send vulnerability to remediate, tickets, and then scan. And it's been the same death loop of just no real innovation, right? Like literally no real innovation. And right now, what are we happening? We literally have an explosion of innovation. That's very exciting to me. So I hope all this happens because we have to change as an industry for the better.
I'm pausing for Alex because I feel like I have a different view as the from the consulting side of this house. So I'm just gonna let you chime in with probably a different view of what are you seeing this? Actually, are you currently seeing any changes that you can extrapolate out for 3 years, Alex, in this domain?
It's definitely going to be interesting. And I think I really agree with what Cameron was saying about working kind of an abstraction level higher. if it's my job to audit somebody else's security, their GitHub repo, their product, whatever it is, there's a lot of kind of friction there with understanding the code and getting things running and just there's just a lot of friction, trust me. So now what we have right now is that we can use agents to kind of reduce most of that friction and get a lot faster at kind of our manual process. And what I think we're going to see is that it's going to shift into a more automated process, but at least for the next couple of years, there's still lots of kind of unsolved organizational kind of implementation problems, like how do we have visibility into what the agents do? And those are a little bit unanswered, and they're a little bit more boring than the technology itself. And so I'll kind of keep it plain again. I think the question was, in 3 years, where are we going to be? Where I expect to be as a pen tester is I'm going to have basically the equivalent of a skill markdown file, like a skill.md, that more or less like helps me verify that this product was automatically tested well. A little bit in tandem, a little bit, well, all the dynamic stuff will probably be mostly agent based. So yeah, I don't have the clearest picture, obviously. We're kind of early on in the stages here, but I'm really hoping that that kind of collaborative way to use agents prevails. Fully automated stuff right now can work, but it's a bit like pulling a slot machine kind of arm where, I can ask one of these really smart agents to just go find vulnerabilities and it'll do it, maybe a little bit undirected, maybe a little bit directed if you kind of give it a direction yourself. And so, yeah, I don't know. In 3 years, it's going to be crazy. I don't know exactly what kind of jump we're going to see from the tools that we have available now. I mentioned skill files. Our skill file is going to always be the thing that we use to kind of give the LLM our methodology. I don't know. I don't really see that changing too much in the next 3 years. We're just going to get agents that are a lot more reliable, a lot more smart, and we're going to fix kind of those organizational problems about what they're doing and how we kind of collaborate with them. So take that
I
as you
just
will.
want, Alex, I want to ask a question because you said like in 3 years we'll be very like you envision like a very much more collaborative and confident, I would say confident AI partner. Um, what level lets you reach that, right? Because I feel like maybe a lot of us, I could be speaking for Ken and Peter and other folks, but I feel like a lot of us are AI skeptics, skeptics. Um, I think it's hard always to think about when will we be at a point? Like, what is it that's going to make it to where we're confident in the AI and that there's like it can actually be a partner? Right now, it doesn't even feel like a junior, or an intern. Like it feels like I don't know, like my cat is coding or something. Like I don't have a lot of confidence in it. I have to always verify everything, and I'm like I've been internally searching like at what point am I going to be like I'm confident?
That's a great question. And what I'm seeing directly on our recent engagements is that I actually can trust the AI to send payloads. Say we theorize a vulnerability and I use the agent to kind of send that curl request, basically, that I need to test that vulnerability. If I can see that curl and see the request and understand it, and then see the output and see like, yes, this output had this in it, so I know like this is definitely like a proven vulnerability because I saw this behavior. So that kind of calls back to the observation kind of problem on how do you make sure these things are working exactly as you want them to in a way that's reliable autonomously, and we kind of don't have that. And I really don't see that changing too much. I kind of agree with you in that sense that if you don't have a professional driving it, like you can't really trust the outputs of it. But if I'm using it as a partner to analyze some code and it kind of tips me off, hey, there's a vulnerability, and then I use the agent to say send a call request and validate that vulnerability. Now I have that confidence, and I think that's where it's going to move in the future as well. Validating dynamically has been a challenge in the past. Having agents that can run browsers kind of quickly on arbitrary websites is really, really token heavy, token expensive, and kind of a challenge to figure out. But as those kind of, hopefully come down a little bit, or maybe people come up with new technologies, like kind of an AI native version of sending these requests and doing what needs to be done and dynamically testing, then yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of confidence there. I'm also just going to kind of be contrarian a bit and say that I've been vibe coding with GPT 5.5 on YOLO mode quite a bit. And so, it hasn't deleted my computer yet, but I've been developing some pretty cool software, I would say. And a lot of it is like more hands off than you would expect. I'm not working for an organization. My code is at that kind of hobbyist level that I was telling you about. But I can create these really cool harnesses and these really cool like one-off weekend projects that I never would have been able to do before. And so in doing that, I've kind of built this trust on like, hey, I know what the AI can do and kind of what it can't do. But that's kind of an individual thing. Like I can't go to a CTO and say, oh yeah, you can trust this because XYZ. Like I've just kind of built up this understanding of what technical level I think the model is at. And so, again, it just comes back to that. We're in a situation where driving it is the best outcome, in my opinion. You still get great outputs with, kind of the more automated stuff, but driving it is the best way currently. And, in 3 years, maybe that'll change. I don't really want that to change. It's not really that fun to press a button and then all the vulnerabilities kind of show up for me as a pen tester, but I know that's kind of the dream button of like somebody who's actually running a company. So we'll see what kind of middle ground we find, but hopefully I will be a part of that process of finding those vulnerabilities for those people. So
I actually think the dream is not press a button and find vulnerabilities, it's press a button, find vulnerabilities, and have those fixed. I think that's the potentially the actual dream, but yeah. I mean, you're not wrong that it's got its bumps, but I feel like um, our team and Pete's like a big part of this. So I'll pretty much just hand it over to him here in a sec, but I'll just say like there have been some strategy like from there's the security side, there's the development side, meaning using AI for development or using AI for security. Using AI for development, there are quite a bit of guardrails you can put in place and some different, like I would say one of the things that's been really helpful, and this is again, I shouldn't talk too much about this, but because Pete had us implement we've used different reviewers. So imagine the thing writing. One thing we found that the thing writing the code should not be the thing, and I'm talking about from a functional perspective and development perspective, not a security perspective. So the thing writing the code shouldn't be the thing reviewing the code. So we always have like if we're let's say developing with Claude, we'll use something like we were using Copilot before we switched to, and this is where I'll hand it over to you, Pete, to maybe explain why we switched over. But the zooming out of the technical implementation side, I just want to say something that like I feel like you can build things pretty quickly and it can go off the rails. There are a lot of things you can do internally for guardrails as you're writing code from like a not breaking things perspective, again, not a security perspective. And then I'll flip over to the security side, which is to say, you yeah, there are some things. Okay, so yeah, you get a lot of value of, driving it, being hands-on, whatever. But in an automated system, there are mechanisms for observability and for evaluations that do. The only downside is like it's after the fact, right? So like if your thing went off the rails, you're like, all right, well, great. Now I know about it, but and I can fix it, but and evaluate it, but like it already happened. So that is some weird like downside stuff that you deal with. But sorry, Pete, did you want to expand upon sort of like the things you do to make it actually work so we don't just break things all day long in our environment?
Yeah, it kind of works. Yeah, I think to that point, I think the verification point, I think it's really at this point, it's an engineering problem and it's solvable. I'll throw out for people that are interested to look, there's a company called Logical Intelligence, and they're working on a formal, like a thing for verification of specs. And so that you can be confident that what you wanted built is actually built. The hard part with that is those specs are they're kind of code in English language, right? So getting off of that tangent for a second, let's just assume we have our spec verified. What our process right now, so humans at our company are verifying the spec. But what happens after that is that we have a code reviewer just review our code from different angles. We spawn multiple subagents, similar to how the system we built for security, but just for code quality. We kind of custom built this around a codex harness that comes and attacks it at different angles and leaves comments on our PRs. And our agents go back and forth in a loop until the PRs come out clean. And at that point is when our engineers start to look at the code, really. And then we start to do deep reviews on the code. We can feel at that point is very confident that there's not going to be weird bugs like a null reference or something like that. What our job becomes is thinking about is there a bug and how this interacts in the bigger system? And that's where the AI is failing right now. And I think, honestly, I don't think that is solvable with LLMs right now. There's world models are being built to try and solve this exact problem of being able to think outside of the box. Something with LLMs is it's always working with what it knows, right? So when we look at Mythos, the new vulnerabilities that it's picking up, it's not picking up new classes of vulnerabilities, right? It's chaining known things like a SQLi and an RCE together, right? It's not coming up with a whole new vulnerability that is just completely nothing like we've ever seen before. So for as long as that is the case, I think humans have to be involved to help drive it. And yeah, I don't know how maybe bolting on systems to LLMs can help solve that. I don't know that it is solvable with LLMs. I think there's going to be another type of model coming that will help with that problem.
Well said. I don't know. It's always weird with the awkward silence after someone says something.
Processing it because I was like, that's a cool tool. So I got to check that out. I got to check out Exploit Bench now. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah, no, great. Those are great answers. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. Another question we got was shift down versus shift left, or shift left and down this at the same time. Can it be done? And I'm gonna pass it over to Alex to answer that question.
Yeah, so just to take a second to kind of define those terms, just to make sure we're all on the same page. When we say shift left, that's moving the security kind of process earlier in the development cycle, like as early on as possible, I guess. And then shifting down would be kind of defining, the underlying infrastructure and tooling, or maybe like your frameworks or, what have you, to just be kind of default secure, automatically secure, as best you can. And should you shift left? Should you shift down? Should you shift all over the place? Obviously, you need to be shifting somewhere because we have AI technology now, and I feel like that's a pretty big difference. And I like the idea of shifting left. I'm a big proponent of, especially when it comes to some of the spec-driven development that I think Pete's maybe explaining earlier. If you have that security kind of baked into your upfront spec, I think you're in a much better spot than if you were trying to find vulnerabilities on the tail end, kind of after that code was generated. But I don't think there's going to be a replacement, especially with LLM technology. We've just talked about how kind of unreliable it can be and what kind of things you have to do to make it reliable. So, we're not going to see like a one size fits all solution for any of this, I don't think. And for shifting down, if we wanted to try to make your low level like platform and infrastructure as secure as possible, and so that vulnerabilities can't happen, well, what you're going to run into are probably a lot of limitations on what you're able to actually like do with your app. And there are big providers that are trying to create no code solutions, Lovable, Appian. Those companies really need to focus on shifting down, making sure that those things that are built by the people who maybe don't have a lot of development experience are secure by default. And it's okay if, maybe those guys don't have the ability to do something in their app just for the sake of security, right? Like, I think that's a fine trade-off. But if you're a traditional development shop and you're making products, the earlier you can do security in the process, I think the better. Just kind of all around. And does that do are LLMs the reason for that shift? Not necessarily. That's just kind of my opinion on where security should be happening. And so yeah, front loading it, shifting it left, whatever you want to call it, into that design phase, I think would be really really valuable. Does anybody have a more rounded take on that, maybe?
I think I pretty much agree with you. Yeah, I think if you're able to shift left, you're able to catch a lot of these new issues that agentic systems provide. I think necessarily because most of the industry is not going to have caught up yet, right? Like we're not typically companies aren't doing a ton of external education for their developers, right? So it took a long time to get to the point to teach developers how to avoid SQLi in the first place, right? So how to teach a developer how to keep an agentic system from going off the rails is pretty hard. So it's going to take time to catch up. So I think in the immediate term, we have to get stricter on our infrastructure, a lot of the zero trust type things. That's it's just necessary, but I do agree, like I think it can all be solved pretty well in the first place when you're planning, you're building it to just avoid those kind of mistakes. And of course, as with everything in AI, there's whole new product lines that are kind of launching to help with those types of things. So definitely, yeah, it's definitely worth looking into that kind of stuff if you are building agentic systems. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I don't know, my brain, I don't think it's ever like shift this way, that way. It's shift everywhere. At least that's always been my process. Is I think if anything, we need to talk more about shifting right. We talk about shift left so much, but then you look at all modern prod tech tools, even the AI ones, they fall over when you start shifting right. Trying to scan right before release to make sure that you're meeting XYZ criteria, or it's by design. Um, Most of the tooling falls over there, and most of your processes internally will fall over there. It's funny because we went from like a waterfall approach to where we were always scanning right in our code and things. I would say at that point, maybe going out a little more secure. But we've gone to this shift left mentality, and now a majority of companies are still releasing with tons of vulns. We're delivering faster than we can fix things. Things are finding like that. So, and then what is it? I can't remember. I haven't looked at the latest Verizon report or whichever report that lists it that like, was it 4 out of 10 companies don't even have an AppSec team, let alone a proper ProdSec team. So that means majority of the software we're all using is insecure. So I like what you guys are talking about, how like we need to think about how can we make this more simplistic and easier, put the guardrails around if you're building models, if you're using them, whichever perspective, something needs to be built in a way that can be that people can buy without security having to pay for a security team and be like, okay, at least I know my dev systems are a little more secure as they use AI and do different things. I don't know. Ken, what do you
You see
think?
it on Reddit. I know you, Cameron, specifically, because I know you're a Redditor like me. You see it all. I'm sure you see it all the time where people are like the folks without security people that are. I don't want to call it vibe. I don't like calling it vibe coding. I feel like it's vibe coding if you're having.
Agentic engineering is what it's called. All right, go corporate. Agentic engineering.
Because with rigor, it is like not vibe. Anyways, those people, like you can literally go, I think it's actually called vibe coding on Reddit, and you can see they're like desperately always on there, like, what do I do to secure this stuff? I don't have a team. I don't, and we're just shipping code nonstop and blah 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 blah. So I just want to say, like Reddit, if you use that as a metric, definitely reinforces what you're saying. Also, I was thinking about what you said earlier and what you just said now. So you said shifting right and then having effectively like, hey, we're going to prod. So like now that everything is all put together, let's have a holistic review of any weird edge cases. And for the longest time, the way that was really solved, or at least the way I've seen it solved, specifically at GitHub, was private bug bounties, right? So you'd have your best, most elite bug bounty folks, given access, feature flagged in to try and rip it apart. And then earlier you were saying that I think you were saying with AI that's capability that you don't see. Well, sorry, not even with AI, just security tooling, no verification at that point, but that you believe that AI and LLMs could do that. I agree with that. To the degree I will say that there is this like weird friction there because Pete brought up a good point about like, well, yeah, but humans are the ones that find entire new classes of vulnerabilities. So I think if I'm looking back at what I had seen out of the private bug bounty program, it was pretty much already existing classes of vulnerabilities that were just chained together. So maybe there is a place, as we're talking about shift right, to do a proper attestation of all running components, and then looking for weird edge cases and things of that nature. So that gives me hope, kind of hearing your thoughts there and thinking that through live.
Yeah,
But we should do it
interesting
all.
future.
We should do it all. We should do it all. I'm with you. Everything. Shift left, down, and right. And up,
Up,
maybe. I don't know.
up.
Whatever.
Yeah, you got to go up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is up? Would that be like training your devs?
Governance, I think.
Governance? Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man. All we hear is shift left. So,
I live at the far right of this, I think. Companies come to us with a product that is either already built or maybe like almost already built. And we've been finding some crazy vulnerabilities. Just, as I said, I'm using LLMs, regular coding harnesses, Claude Code, and yeah, the vulnerabilities are just falling out lately. So I don't know exactly what strategy the companies are using that I'm testing against, but when I say shift left, what I'm seeing on the right is that they have not shifted left enough, and that there are some vulnerabilities in here that probably could have been designed out. So just kind of wrapping it up there.
So to be clear, you're seeing vulnerabilities where if forget like the incremental code that they're churning on, but like just from like literally a let's step back and plan and think better here about how we're designing this. Like if they had just taken that kind of step, maybe some of these vulnerabilities wouldn't have fallen out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not easy to take those steps either, right? Like I'm not trying to disparage anybody for ever putting out a vulnerability. Like I'm a vibe coder. I've seen my own vulnerabilities and I've been like, oh, I better not say that again to the LLM. Um,
I want
yeah,
to know what that instance was when that dawned on you. I want you to tell me that story. Maybe later.
sure, maybe later. But yeah, so I guess I'm a little biased here, but if you wanted to shift right, I think that's really valuable. I feel like I've proven my value on that kind of right-oriented testing on some of these recent engagements I've been on. So yeah, shift left, hopefully design some of those out, and then validate that on the tail end with a trusted partner, an automated system that you trust. I recommend a human, but yeah, get it tested at the end and the front, and you're going to be a lot better off on your security posture if you do that. So I would definitely not advise shifting everything left. I haven't done spec-driven development myself with like an actual project, but I have doubts about like how well specified everything can be to prevent some of these vulnerabilities. So I definitely advocate for just like the overall, like, hey, sit down and, design these systems with it in mind as much as possible. Maybe use your spec-driven development kind of prompt to generate one version of the app and kind of see what that looks like, and use that to kind of design, more security around it too. So yeah, left, right, up, down. I think that's kind of where we're at.
I like humans for the shift right part too, by the way. I'm still not ready to, yeah, let's just to still need humans there. I mean, I'd love it if they use AI tooling, great, to fix, speed things up, make it whatever, more efficient, find more things, hopefully. But yeah, I'm with you. Still very much believe like we need human beings doing this harder, higher level work for now.
Well, I mean, I want from your guys' perspective, right? Like AI has been kind of touted as like we're going to replace people, right? At least the people who are trying to shock and get media approach and marketing, right? Um, but from what I've seen and from what I've read and learned, studied, all these different things, AI really showed that we are in a software deficit and that the need for software and usability, applications, all different things has the demand has always outpaced the amount that we could deliver. And when everyone started to notice, oh, I can vibe code, and let's say I think the average or the statistic I'm seeing at least that from a good source is like 30% faster, right? Devs are 30% more productive. That is immediately being eaten up and needed, right? And they're like, we're delivering faster, but there's still 10 times more software we want and things, apps, features, things, functionality that we want to build. So I'm like, the human element, I don't know, is going to go away. Like, it just means that all of us are just becoming more efficient. You
Yeah, I
guys
mean, I wrote
start the
about
same?
this on a blog post with like within the last, I don't know, a few weeks, we'll say it was that. It was like, yeah, we're a factory floor now. And I know Pete doesn't would caution against calling it a software factory. I feel that it is becoming that. And it's like, well, what happened in those scenarios where, look at an Amazon warehouse. I think I use like automotive manufacturing plants. Yeah, humans stopped, doing the manual turning of a screw or whatever, but the need for cars didn't decrease, right? The need for or the desire for people to have random stuff shipped to their house very quickly, that didn't go away. It just expanded. It just kept increasing. So yes, there are robots doing more and more steps there, but there are humans governing those things, and doing that higher level work to make sure that those, kind of simpler tasks are being done effectively. But to your point, the demand never decreased. The demand didn't even stay the same. The demand has always increased for the output of that factory. So I agree.
Um, One thing from your guys' side, former dev, I love code, but we've turned into a world where all devs are no longer code writers, they are PR reviewers. And when I was a dev, my least favorite part of the day was PR review. It was the last thing I did at the end of the day, pushed it to, always did them last. Like, do you think that's going to change the quality of code that is going to be coming from across the board? And then that, I assume that will transition as we become more of a security domain or automated discipline, engineer discipline. We're going to stop looking at hands-on exploiting XSS and things. Those skills are going to get rusty. Are you guys excited for becoming essentially PR, output reviewers and not doing as much hands-on?
Think,
Um,
sorry, I'll just say this, sorry, real quick, and then I'll hand it over to you, Alex. I just want to say this. I have to interject there because I think it's more of imagine what I really think is no, just imagine all the stuff that like you would be doing that you consider like meaningful work now, probably dropping away since you get to the things, and actually you said this earlier, Cameron, I think, which is to get to that higher level work, which is the stuff that the proactive stuff we can never get to because we're always dealing with all these bugs and whatever. So, anyways, sorry, Alex. I did have to throw that out there because I had to.
Hey, I'm full of contradictions. All right. I have a lot of feelings, and my feelings are all mixed, and there's not one perspective.
Same.
I think I have an interesting analogy here. Well, at least I think so. I grew up kind of how I got started in the security space is with games. So, I was a kid playing MMO games and I wanted to figure out like how can I like write some scripts that makes I can come back tomorrow and my inventory is full, right? How do I make the gameplay itself? So now we're in this space where I can kind of use LLMs to live out that dream of finding vulnerabilities for me semi-automatically. And so I just see this overlap of like, wow, it was really fun to kind of automate games. And now I'm in this situation where I can actually automate something that a company kind of cares about and, vulnerability detection, identification, exploitation. And so personally, I love working at that higher abstraction level. Would I consider myself like a PR reviewer? Not necessarily. If you're the dev, I think, the fun would be in putting in the prompts and not in like designing the system, not necessarily reviewing the PR output. I agree that would be kind of boring. But yeah, for pen testing, if I can set up an agent to work all night and I come back and, look at my little bag of loot in the morning, that's good. I consider that good. Is that going to be a reliable, exhaustive test? No, and I understand that, but it's kind of fun that I can work at this higher abstraction level, in my opinion.
Yeah, perfect. That makes sense. We are just at the top of the hour, so we are just out of time. So we're going to wrap up. I know there are a number of questions we were not able to get to in the webinar. We'll be following up via email just to answer any of those questions, and we're happy to jump on a call too to talk through anything live if you have additional questions. Thanks, Ken, Cameron, Alex, and Pete for joining the webinar, and thank you all for joining as well. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we'll be sending out the recording shortly. Bye, everyone.
Everybody.